We live in an objective golden age when it comes to Stellaris. All the systems and all the foundations have been set, and now all the additional build-up and deepening of those systems is occurring. We saw this in the past with the new subject system that came in Overlord, but now with First Contact, the primitives are at hand, because previously, let's be honest, primitives were not all that great. You found them in space, you put an observation post nearby, maybe get a little bit of science or uplift them, but why would you? Because there would be no value in it. So usually you would just send a ship over to conquer them, or kidnap all of their pups, or just leave them alone for a little while, and then they would probably nuke themselves out of existence, which was just unfortunate. But now, after all this time that we've not had any sort of work done on the primitives, and with all the new systems that have come since 2.0, because it's the last time that they were touched, finally in First Contact we're going to be seeing these systems as well as new ones applied to those primitives. Now, First Contact by itself is a bit of a strange name, because the First Contact system, or the contact system, is already in the game. It's how you make contact with another species. But for these aliens, these primitives, it is in fact First Contact, which is very, very interesting. So what is going on with a First Contact situation to begin with? Well, previously you would have like a tiny little screen at the bottom right of the corner of the screen with some events popping up, but instead the whole contact screen is now going to be reused for this particular purpose. The aliens will have a certain level of awareness of what's going on with aliens existing, so sometimes they may be able to see that there is a massive space fight going on in their solar system. They'll have telescopes out there, like they are in the early industrial stage, and they can see that there's things going on. They know that stuff is afoot, or one of the moons in their solar system explodes. So I do expect that there's going to be a ton of different events going on with observation of alien species, because not in addition to being able to reveal our presence to an alien species, you can also build spy networks on those planets. So envoys will be able to be applied here once again, and that's a completely different shift from what we had previously, where you could try to integrate a species or influence them, and that's probably going to be applied in the espionage system, like where we would previously have intel, etc. It does mean that there seems to be yet another place where envoys can be applied, and they are already so valuable, so whether or not this is a wise idea is a little bit of a different question. But yeah, aliens will be aware of what's going on. Sure, primitives from the Bronze Age won't know what's going on, whereas ones with telescopes, they will probably have a good idea that weird stuff is afoot. But let's be honest here, we would know if we used to have two moons if it exploded in the Stone Age, because people back then would have probably noticed. So the bigger you do things, the more chance it has to be noticed. But yeah, diplomacy and espionage are part of this particular process, and as I mentioned, you can show yourselves to the aliens before they create any sort of FTL, and yeah, unveil yourself. If you're familiar with, say, Star Trek or anything along those lines, especially that episode where the aliens think that Picard is a god, that's the kind of scenario that we're looking into here. Or a species that may or may not be on the cusp of generating FTL drive, and then Riker decides to get mugged or something along those lines. Good episodes, though. You should probably go and take a look at that. However, it would appear that there's also incentives to completely keep species isolated, and they can go onto weird developmental paths. And there's some iconography here, because basically the galaxy at large, at least that's the idea, has a certain way of how things work. Like, how does physics work, how does time work, etc. But if you can keep a species isolated, they may come up with some different ways of how everything works. So that could be really interesting in terms of events, etc. We don't actually have an idea of how many events are attached to this particular pack, but that right there is something that really interests me, the true alienness of some of these primitives, which I think is really, really cool. Now, we've already talked a little bit about the origins that will be coming with this pack, and we've gone a little bit deeper in the Death Diary today, because apparently the universe is in fact very cruel. Now, originally in Federations, there was an origin in the code. It was referred to as broken slaves or freed slaves. I did a video on it at the time, but now it's finally back, where we have broken shackles. And apparently it has, similar to all of the other origins in this pack. They are challenging and they have unique starting conditions. So apparently there is going to be stuff in there that is extremely story focused, but could bend in very interesting ways. Same thing with Payback. Similar story there, where a civilization fights back an alien invader. So yeah, classic tropes when it comes to science fiction. We fight back the aliens. Independence Day is a good example. And then you go out there to exact Payback, obviously. And apparently these two are linked. So Broken Shackles and Payback are linked together in some way, shape, or form. So I would actually expect that aliens could come in Payback, steal Pops, who then free himself through Broken Shackles, etc. So it could be that whenever there is a Broken Shackles origin on one empire, there will be a Payback empire as well, which is kind of similar, reflected to the United Federation of Earth, or the Commonwealth of Man, with the Lost Colony origin, which is very similar in that regard, where certain species can be popping up all over the shop. So that will be really cool. We're going to be hearing about that very, very soon as well. Finally, there is then Fear of the Dark. Apparently, Fear of the Dark is a challenging origin, which is very, very different from any of the other things that are in the game, and will most likely be one of the first things that we're going to be looking at once the game is becoming available. It's different and difficult, but apparently the teaser is, what if Venus exploded one day? Yeah, that would make people very, very anxious and fearful of the dark, especially if it's very obvious that there is an alien colossus floating over there and all of a sudden there are exploding systems. Speaking of which, I really wonder how it works with primitives when you have a colonized planet right next door to a bunch of primitives. I wonder how that would work, especially if they're, say, in the Renaissance age or anything like that. Would they realize that there are aliens afoot and they're just not contacting them? That would be pretty interesting. Let me know what you think about that. In the meantime, though, Cloaking. Cloaking is coming, and it's basically designed originally to hide the observation posts that your empire is basically hiding in. Yeah, you've already seen it in the trailer, in order to uncloak your stuff. But apparently they will also be applied to ships. They'll probably be very, very expensive to operate in terms of energy. So expect corvettes with cloaking to go around to shoot torpedoes up aliens' assholes just like that. And that's the kind of stuff that we really like. You know, cloaking is one of those things that we've never really seen in Stellaris in any way, shape, or form. And even though it's such a strong thing in science fiction, it's good to see it. And seeing a mechanic being built around it is a lot of fun. So yeah, I expect at least 4 more weeks of Dev Diaries until we may be seeing this expansion, because we need to go through all the origins as well as all the additionals, patch notes, and all that stuff. So who knows what's coming up in the near future. This is a story pack, and I'm very excited about it. It means a lot of events. It means a lot of additional stuff, and especially with this unique stuff that can happen with aliens, events, and everything attached to that. It just seems to be a very exciting time for anything involved here when it comes to Stellaris. So there you go. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up here. What do you think? Are you ready to explore the dark? Are you ready to bust your shackles? Are you ready for some payback? Because I definitely am. Story pack has been so long. I want to know what you think down in the comments below, especially regarding this awareness system and everything around that, and whether or not the spying could be a little bit more interesting when it comes to the primitives, or if you think about yourself, man, just another sync for Envoys to get into. Leave your comments below. I'm looking forward to it. In the meantime, though, we're going to go wrap this up here. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take good care of yourselves, and as always, eat Shutter.